Welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I am Representative Gary Harper, and this is Josh.
You went so long without forgetting.
Josh, right?
Yeah, that's
Josh.
right. That's right.
I knew it. I knew it. See, I'm
You think
still
you're
good.
important today? You got a badge on
I
today?
got a badge. I'm wicked important.
Yeah, wicked important.
Wicked important.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
How you doing today?
I don't know. Long day. Long days. So anyway, our guest today is Adam Olson from way up north and Ware, and way down under.
Way down south.
Way down
The deep, deep south.
the deep south.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, things are just crazy at the State House because they every person that's questioned, they say, okay, you know, Bob Jones, you're recognized. Bob doesn't know what to do, so they fiddle around for a while, and they get on their computer and they unmute themselves, and then they start talking, and they only get 2 minutes, and so it's just taking forever. We were there all day Friday, Monday night. I was there till 6 o'clock from 9 o'clock to 6 o'clock at night. Today we got out of there around 4:30.
Anybody have the cat filter on?
No. What was that? I don't even know what that is.
So, a lawyer logged into his remote session with the judge and
Is this in the New Hampshire House?
No, and the opposing counsel and whatnot, and they were going to have a legal session, all remote on Zoom, but the lawyer, his daughter, had apparently used the computer right before him.
Yes.
And turned on the kitty cat filter.
Yeah.
So you had the judge and the lawyers, and then this particular lawyer, his face was a cat. And the judge is like, yeah, I think you have a filter on, and he says, I know, Your Honor, I can assure you I'm really here. I'm not a cat.
But I have no idea how to fix it.
No, I mean, so I was just wondering if anybody, on the Criminal Justice Committee was a cat today.
No.
Cats.
But we did discuss them and dogs.
Oh.
That was the big brouhaha at the end of the day.
What, having cats in the committee?
No, there was a legislation to, right now, it's a misdemeanor if you steal somebody's dog. They want to up it to a felony. Well, I have a lot of problems with that because right now, the testimony we heard was completely inadequate. We don't really have numbers. I asked, well, are people being prosecuted now?
Right.
And they said no. I says, well, if you're not going to prosecute him for a misdemeanor, what that doesn't make any sense. I mean,
well, I guess that's what you need. You need numbers. If we're going to put a law in place, and supposedly have an enforceable measure of that law, the question is, how many of these dog napping, cat napping crimes are taking place in this state? Right. Is it really enough to warrant all of this time to put another law in the books that's not going to be enforced?
That's not that bothers me. What bothers me is I really am apprehensive about adding more felonies.
Oh, I absolutely agree. It's another felony.
Right. So you just took...
You got husband and wife,
some
custody battle over a cat.
Right.
And all of a sudden there's a felony involved with a marital issue.
So this is I don't know if they can see it on the camera, but anyway, this is a 38 special casing that I have because I was shooting the other day, right? So that 38 special casing,
empty,
expense,
and
totally harmless. I mean, you could put little rings in your forehead with it. That's about it. Is a year in jail. It's a felony in Massachusetts.
To have that on you?
To have this on me is a felony. Yeah. In other words, I go shooting up here, and I leave a couple empty pieces of brass in the back seat of my car that I don't see. That's a felony in the state of Massachusetts. I get caught with that, and I am prosecuted. I lose my right to bear arms because I left a 38 special piece of brass in the back seat. And I don't want New Hampshire turned into to Massachusetts, and every time somebody passes gas in the wrong spot, they now lose their right to bear arms.
That's assault.
That's assault with a dead weapon, but I don't know about deadly. But anyway, so so I ended up aggravating my chairman who wanted to pass this today.
Did you have some nice PETA representatives
No, actually, no,
testifying?
no.
I would think they're going
No.
to. See, my problem with it would be that, right? But I would also extend that. And I'm a dog lover. I'm a cat lover. I love animals, right? I'm also not against hunting either, right? There's reason. But I am a dog lover. I've got dogs. But raising it to a felony is one step closer to humanizing these pets, right?
Right.
To humanizing and giving them human rights,
Yeah.
right? And you go down that line, and eventually, oh, the dog has rights, right?
Right.
And then, oh, we can't neuter this dog, and we can't spay this dog without their permission, without their consent.
first they
And
have to
because
do-
they can't give their consent.
They have
then-
to decide what gender they are first.
Oh yeah, but exactly. But that's where it goes. That's exactly where PETA wants this to go. That's why I asked if there was a PETA representative, because the more rights you give to animals, that just makes them very happy.
Right. I mean, I think just the issue you raised with the husband and wife splitting up with a pet or pets in the household, it's going to create mayhem if you went ahead with a legislation like that.
Yep. So anyway, we talked about it. You said that the chairman wanted to pass it through. Did
Yeah.
it get through committee? Is it going out?
No. The Democrats started joining me, and so I had
Gary.
an unholy alliance.
Oh,
Yeah,
Gary, that's
I know.
shameful.
I know.
That is shameful.
I feel guilty. But yeah, no,
No, it definitely,
we
it's
should-
a member of the family. It's a crime, but,
Now, see,
but
there-
raising this to the level of a felony, and it is a
Oh.
dangerous path that you go down.
Before we get into testimony from Sir Adam, I wanted to go over what happened Friday. Friday was a horror show. So we have a bill in the committee. The bill is to make the use by law enforcement of rubber bullets and tear gas illegal.
Okay.
Okay, so apparently okay, I'm going to be honestly give you their perspective, and I think I can express it reasonably. So their belief is that tear gas and rubber bullets in a riot or a protest situation is oppressive of speech in and of itself, and disproportionately hurts people of color.
When they're having one of those peaceful protests,
So,
right?
Right.
so using something non-lethal, such as rubber bullets or
Yeah, it's
beanbag bullets,
It's mostly the intimidation
to
factor.
stop somebody from starting a fire to burn down my house
Correct.
is so.
I'm
what
just
I
telling-
should do
I'm-
is use live rounds.
Well, that's I know. I'm just trying to
I
present.
mean, that's the alternative,
I'm
right?
just trying to sincerely present their argument. That's what their argument is that it disproportionately affects black people. They said that when the peaceful protesters came to Manchester, they were met with National Guard, many of which had, tear gas and rubber
Was
bullets.
it used?
No.
So that's my question. As somebody who's testifying in front of a New Hampshire House committee about the oppressive use of tear gas and rubber bullets, it's going to be a New Hampshire law, not a federal law, but
Correct.
it's a New Hampshire law. But someone who's testifying about the oppressive use of tear gas and rubber bullets by New Hampshire law enforcement, has this person been subject to tear gas or rubber bullets
Well-
by New Hampshire law enforcement?
Well, the caller in
I mean,
question.
that's who I would expect to testify.
Right. Yeah, that didn't happen in New Hampshire. All the testimony we had in New Hampshire was that in fact, it was one of the sponsors conceded that the police officers in Nashua were really well trained, and she did not know of any instance of abuse. Manchester, the same thing. They didn't know of any instance of abuse. All the abuse and testimony of the abuse of, which I'm not sure it was all across the country, not New Hampshire. So none of this pertained to New Hampshire,
So,
but the bill would.
all right, so we have a bill of the House, and we have a, someone to come to testify. Let's start that clip.
Thank you. So I'm testifying on behalf
Oh,
of
we
Black
can't
Lives
hear it
Matter
here.
Nashville, but in my personal capacity as an organizer from that organization. And I am testifying in support of HB 564.
Okay.
So returning to my testimony, the peaceful demonstrations that occurred both here at home and across the country make up what has been called the largest civil rights movement in modern American history. Although these protests were overwhelmingly peaceful, many of them were met with a highly militarized police presence.
Okay.
In cities like
okay.
Washington,
We
New
don't
York,
need to
and
give
even
this guy
Boston,
any
demonstrators who had committed
more
no crime.
any more air. Okay. So bottom line is, this is a BLM associate who is from Nashua, and he's here
from,
to
I
complain.
believe he was from Manchester, but the key thing is he wasn't just BLM. He was also, I believe, claimed to represent the ACLU,
Right.
which to me is actually quite crucial, because the ACLU testifies. When I was on Judiciary Committee, they would testify, and they've actually helped. They've been on the show,
right.
helping us with the privacy issues, right?
Right, with the
And they're
facial recognition.
They're usually extremely cognizant of the fact that you don't insult the committee,
right.
because
So-
you want you might disagree with them today, but tomorrow you might want them on your side for another bill they do agree with.
Right. So this fella, he came, he started testifying, and you can tell by the drone of his voice that he was reading from a script. It was a prepared statement. And let's go to the end of his statement where he makes an accusation of the entire Criminal Justice Committee in Concord.
Compare us to the terrorists that marched on the Capitol and stormed that building is disgusting. And frankly, the casual racism that has gone on in this hearing is disgusting. We are talking about unarmed, peaceful demonstrators that are your constituents. They marched for peace, equity, and justice.
Right, excuse me, the witness will suspend. The chair does not receive any testimony today to be racist towards anybody. And I hope no one, and I'm speaking on behalf of the entire committee, but I feel that if anyone said anything that was racist or inappropriate, that all 21 members of this committee would stand up at the same time.
Okay, pause right there.
Anything of that.
Just pause. All right. So he made an accusation. He said that the entire committee was guilty of casual racism throughout this entire
We've
process.
gone from racism to systemic racism. Now we have casual racism.
Right. So what it is he was reading from a script. He what did he say? He said frankly, the casual racism that's happened here today, that was pre-written days before the committee.
Are you
hearing.
positive?
I am positive.
Okay.
But it was pre-written to do exactly what happened. As soon as he made that accusation of the entire committee, the committee chair had to stop him and say, "Hey, wait." Right? That's the committee chair's job.
Is to not let
stop
stuff get out of
testimony that
hand.
is going off in a direction that it doesn't need to go. And so the chairman said, "Hey, that didn't happen. You don't say that in this room, right? If it did happen, we have 21 committee members here who would have said something."
Yeah, keep in mind that the chairman, Daryl Abbas, is of North African descent,
Exactly.
which is not why I did what I did, but it is comical.
Okay, well, you gave it away, Gary. Okay, so the chairman tells the witness, "Hey, there's been no casual racism here today," and then we continue.
Nature. I did not perceive it, and I welcome anyone on this committee, if they perceived anything as to be racist, is please speak up.
Your silencing of me in this moment is racist.
I understand what you're saying,
Okay.
but you're saying that other witnesses were, so I would just point that out.
All right. So there we have it.
So that's my big sin Friday.
He triggered
triggered me.
The committee chairman to interrupt and say, "Hey, there's no racism here." And the planned response, the canned response is, hey, by stopping me, you're racist just by stopping me in the middle of my my speech.
Yes, yes.
That was canned. That was certainly planned. He hooked him in, and
I couldn't help
it
myself.
was funny, and
And
we
it
heard
was-
somebody laughing in the
Yeah,
background.
that was me. I was. It was so hysterical. It was just so ridiculous. The whole idea that using rubber bullets, and I mean, well, the thing is, I think part of it is the people that are introducing this are young, so they don't remember things like Kent State.
Right.
Right.
Wouldn't the kids at Kent State prefer the National Guard use rubber bullets?
Exactly. There was a Neil Young song. Was it 3 Dead in Ohio?
It was
the-
4.
Yeah.
4.
Oh, 4 Dead in
The
Ohio.
National
whatever
Guard
the-
killed 4 people at Kent State because they were cornered and they didn't know what to do, which is why they have rubber bullets. When things get out of hand, they can try to subdue some of the
I'm sure
insanity.
Ashley Babbitt would have liked a
Right.
rubber bullet.
I was just thinking that too.
Oh yeah, that's actually one of the tests. Somebody pointed out that, if the guard inside the Capitol had other means.
It's a month later now, folks, and we still don't know the name of the black Capitol police officer who killed a white peaceful protester. So we still don't know that person's
Yeah,
name.
why didn't
So,
they? Why wasn't there a move to have the Capitol Police defunded after that?
I don't know. I don't know. But
I'm waiting for
it
that.
certainly doesn't fit any narrative because it was a black police officer. We can see that in the video.
Right.
And it was a white woman who
Wasn't
any
it a
threat
member
to
of
him.
BLM that actually videotaped it?
It was.
Yeah,
It
that's
was.
weird. Why
It was.
has he been charged?
He was charged and released. Catch and release. The
Oh,
old-
catch and release. Was he illegal immigrant too?
No, I don't
Oh,
think he was.
I don't know.
But he was a benefit of Kamala Harris's bail money. So
Oh, no way.
yeah.
No, that's weird. So anyway, that's how I got in trouble this week. I don't think I got in trouble this. I mean, that was last Friday. This week, I don't think I
you
get in
did
trouble.
okay. I laughed at a judge once in a courtroom.
That's a
and
bad move.
that-
That's
that
a
hurt.
wicked bad move.
Well, the
I've done
witness
that.
was lying straight to the judge's face, and I just could not help myself. And she came down on me.
Oh yeah, that's not smart.
I'll bet.
Yeah. Something about putting on a black dress on a judge makes him a little bit touchy.
Yeah, it was a.
You figured that out?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Oh yeah. Anyway, Adam. Oh, I'm not supposed to do that. What the heck is going on?
Oh boy, where do I start? Probably.
I just want
Go,
to.
Joshua.
Last thing before we get to you, Adam, I just want to remind our viewers that we had Adam on here previously on September 23rd's show, and we were discussing the downward spiral that America has been taking. Adam, you warned us.
I did, and I mean, what I've seen, it's terrible. I mean, in the last 2 to 3 weeks, I'm seeing this country slowly transform into the place that I left, and it's extremely upsetting. But there's so many parallels with what's happening at a federal level, even at a state level here in New Hampshire, I'm sad to say, with the level of control of the government over its own citizens, its own constituents, that really frightens me the most. I mean, probably the place I should start is Perth, which is our westernmost capital city in Western Australia. Perth is run with an iron fist by the Premier, who is like the governor, guy by the name of
Now,
Mark
are
McGowan.
they using the coronavirus BS to oppress the people there also? Is that part of their tool bit?
Well, let me give you some perspective first. There have been less than 900 people in total die in Australia since the beginning of this.
How many people live in Australia?
26 million people live in Australia.
Okay.
Do
Okay,
the
so
math,
we've had
well
less
under
deaths in the
0.5%.
entire... Right, and Australia, also for some perspective, it's the same size as the continuous 48 states. So it's a big country. People are
20
more spread out.
26 million. So that's the same amount of people as California.
Right, and I mean, just also, you've got to remember that most Australians live within 90 kilometres, like 60 mile of the coast. So there's a big desert in the middle. There's nothing there, you know. So people are still clustered together. I mean, in Sydney alone, there's nearly 5 million people in the Greater Sydney region. In Melbourne, there's 4 million people. In Brisbane, there's 2 million people. So people are still relatively clustered. But, I mean, to their credit, yep, they've kept the cases very, very low. But it's been at great expense. They have destroyed small businesses right around I remember, Australia doesn't manufacture anything. The last thing we really had was a car industry, which was propped up by the taxpayer to the tune of billions of dollars just so we could have a car industry and say we make something. So the government that I actually worked for when I was a staffer for the Conservative Party in Australia, they put an end to that. They said, this can't go on. You know, it's not up to taxpayers to subsidise an industry that isn't paying its own way. And it was, ironically, Ford Motor Company owned one of the car companies, and was the brand Ford. And then
they got rid of one of the best Ford Mustang cousins.
Right.
Mad Max's car there.
Yeah. And then we had Holden, which was owned by General Motors Holden. So they were both American companies. The CEOs were both American imports that were in Australia. And but yeah, I'll cut to the chase. I mean, we have no industry in Australia. All we have is tourism, education, agriculture and mining. We don't make anything. So when you just stop the economy like they have, they stopped the coronavirus. They stopped it good. I mean, if I wanted to go home right now, they only allow 50 people on an aircraft. Now, when you're flying from Los Angeles to Sydney, you're not getting on a Southwest 737. You're getting on a big plane that costs a lot of money to get across that pond. And to put 50 people on it, for the airlines to make a profit, they can only sell first-class tickets. So we have 40,000 Australians right now stranded around the world, and not people like me that don't want to go home, people that are like permanent residents that have lost their job because of coronavirus, can't pay the rent, can't pay health insurance, and they're effectively stateless. Our own government has made us stateless. And it's taking months to get people home because of these massive queues to get 50 people at a time on a plane to get home. When you do get home, the military escorts you to a hotel room and you are locked in that room. You're not even allowed out for 1 hour's exercise a day. It's worse than jail. So if you're a family of 4, can you imagine? A couple of kids, mum and dad, locked in a hotel room 24/7 for 2 weeks to prove you don't have the coronavirus, and then you're allowed out. But just getting home for an Australian now is a disaster. And I mean, for someone like me, like I said, I'm happy here. I don't want to go home. I'm a citizen now, thank God, because now I have some level of representation, because if I was just an Australian if I was a permanent resident living here, I'm effectively stateless.
Did he just point at me and say some semblance of representation? I think that's what I saw.
No, you're imagining that.
Poor bugger.
You just want to be a victim today, don't you, Gary? Gary's playing the victim.
Yeah,
That's not like you.
I started talking about Perth, and Perth, we had one person was infected by one of these people in a quarantine facility. So he was one of the security guards, a paid mercenary, if you will, overseeing the little jail they're running there in Perth for Australian citizens trying to get back to their families. And he got the coronavirus, and he'd been to like a shopping centre, a couple of pubs, a few other places. The response to that one person, they shut down that entire city for 5 days. Everything. They had curfews. They shut down the entire city. I mean, anyone watching this would think I'm making this up. Well, no, I'm not making it up. The Premier, like the Governor of the state, shut down an entire city. In Melbourne, we were shut down there for, I think it was 8 weeks in the thick of this. And I mean, these small businesses still have to pay rent. They still have to pay their staff to keep them on for when they're allowed back. Even a 5-day shutdown, that's a huge impact. But I come back to the industries in Australia, and we rely so heavily on tourism. There is no tourism. There's no international tourism in Australia right now. It's stopped.
For a year.
And they're talking now, not the summer of this year, the summer of next year, before even I can get home, despite the fact that they know that they've got the vaccine. The Prime Minister has already come out, the equivalent of our President, has already come out and said, well, there's all these variants now, so, we can't be sure that the vaccines are going to work for that. So we're just going to keep these procedures in place that I just explained to you for at least another year. Now, for someone, the mental health impact this is having on expats, I've got 2 parents in their late 70s. They're both cancer survivors. My mum had a mastectomy, Dad had bowel cancer. I've always had that comfort of knowing I'm 24 hours away from home. That has been taken away from me by my own government.
Right.
If I can't go home now, for a start, it would cost me thousands of dollars. I'd be waiting for months. So if someone did get sick or there was an emergency, there's no way I can even get on a plane in the foreseeable future. People just keep getting bumped. And from what I've heard, the people that are bumping them are the people with the money. So, if you can afford the first class ticket home, or you can afford to offer the airline more, they'll get rid of the pleb and they'll put someone on that plane that can afford it. And that's the other thing that's amazing right now. We've got the Australian Open tennis tournament being played in Australia right now. Every professional tennis player that wanted to enter that competition and their entourage, 1,200 people, were let into Australia. They can go and practice in their facilities. It's all good for them. There are a few of them quarantined because a couple of the people on those planes tested positive. But they're having a tennis tournament. And if I had to get home in an emergency, sorry, too bad, Adam. You're not important enough to come home.
Yeah.
So that's what the future looks
I
like.
think that, though, if you look worldwide, that's what it's all about. The governor of California is telling everybody they have to lock down. You can't go outside. You can't go to church. You can't go to the pub. You can't watch TV if you do go to a bar, even on Super Bowl weekend. But he's sitting there with
At the
dozens
French
of
Laundry.
his best friends with no mask on, partying it up.
Right.
So they obviously aren't really afraid of the virus
No, they're
at
not.
all. But they want us to be so they can control.
Yeah, and I mentioned to you guys on the way in, we've got a bit of a Black Lives Matter thing happening in Australia where they borrowed the whole concept here for Indigenous rights, and there are some issues around that I won't get into. But when there's that protest, the police and the governments turn a blind eye. Over the last few months, we've had multiple protests where people have come out and protested against the lockdowns, and they've been cuffed and arrested and taken off to the big house, right there on the spot. Protesting is literally illegal against the lockdown in Victoria, which is the second most populous state
Well,
in
that's
Australia.
the same thing they were doing in the United States. Every time somebody had a protest in Concord, they'd call it a super spreader event, and it'd
Right.
be all over the news. But a Black Lives Matter protest was totally okay.
Yeah, but I mean, like you had the Trump rally here, or several thereof, and
Yeah.
no one could stop it. You had the right to go to that. It wasn't a protest, but none of that, no sort of gathering like that would be allowed to protest the lockdown. But there's so many double standards, and that's, I guess, the similarity with America. And what I'm seeing, unfortunately, over the last few months, I'm seeing these double standards creep in here that have been in Australia forever. And it's a scary scenario.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, the government works by the consent of the governed, and the government is losing that consent daily.
Right.
It's getting insane. I mean, the fact that they need, I think 20,000 troops around the Capitol building to protect it
Right.
is an indicator that
And a brand new fence.
a brand new fence. Yeah, a government that doesn't believe in fences now just put up fences.
Yeah, what we really need is for the rank and file law enforcement officers and military personnel that are brought in to enforce these unconstitutional laws to start thinking really hard about that oath that they took when they first entered service.
Right.
Because if you know that it is an unconstitutional order that you've been given, i.e., you arrest lockdown protesters, but you let BLM protesters burn churches down. If you know there's a discrepancy there and you're being asked to arrest one and not the other, you need to take your oath into consideration. It's time to start arresting all protesters that cause trouble, and it's time to start allowing all peaceful protesters, truly peaceful protesters, not the peaceful protesters that throw Molotov cocktails, the peaceful protesters that don't do anything aggressive at all, need to be left alone.
Yep.
But
Right.
it's and that's what it's coming down to in Australia too. Is if if the military and the law enforcement weren't falling in line, then this wouldn't be an issue.
Right, well,
the
those-
issue is, you
yeah.
know, so
Those protests, like I said, they turned a blind eye. I mean, this was on our National Day, Australia Day. It's supposed to be a day we get together and celebrate everything that's good and diverse and kind of cool about Australia, because there is a lot of things to love about Australia. I love my home. It'll always have a special place in my heart, but this is my home now. And I mean, honestly, guys, the timing that I became an American citizen on September 19th, 2018, it was one of the proudest days of my life, and I feel like in 18 months, it's all just fallen apart.
Yeah.
And it's so depressing. It's I just can't believe this is happening at the time when I chose to bring my family here.
Where else would you go? I mean, what
Right, well,
place on the planet is left?
This is the last stand. It really is. And you know, the other point, Joshua, that you raised there about the double standards. Can you imagine how people like me felt? And there's millions of us that came here the right way when these executive orders were being signed in week one, giving criminal illegal aliens a pathway to citizenship that A, cost me thousands of dollars, B, enormous stress and anxiety. 6 years of my life from the first day of application to actually becoming an American citizen. Just the drama you go through. I mean, there's nothing the American government didn't know about me when I came here. And they wanted to know, and this is fair enough, by the way, I've got no issue with any of this. They wanted to know that I could buy a house, that I could support my family, that I had ample savings in the bank so I could survive while I looked for a job. They made it very clear to me that there will be no welfare for you. You know, when you're a permanent resident, you're going to have to look after yourself. And no problem with any of that. But I was put through the ringer to get here. I actually waited so long. It was 2.5 years from when I'd applied. We'd already sold our business, our house. I was still waiting for my green card to come through, and we'd already set a date that we had to move over here. So I ended up coming over on a tourism visa. But because my wife and kids were Americans, they had no problem. They could stay. I couldn't. I had to go back to Australia because wherever you file, you have to go back to that consulate to finish the process. So I spent 6 months here, and then I had to fly back to Sydney, do my medical test where I was tested for every single disease you can imagine, chest x-rays, blood tests, the whole works, you know. Like I said, they knew everything about me. Yet there's people already here in this country that just stroll on in
right
without any of that scrutiny, and we're going to say that's okay. I mean, what about me? Should I get a refund now?
Well,
Do I get my money back?
There are tens of thousands of folks just like you, of all races from all countries
Right.
around this world that had the exact same experience as you, and are just as angry at it. Right? There are
Right.
plenty of non-white folks. I mean, you happen to be white, but there are plenty of non-white folks who feel exactly the same way. They came here the right way,
Right.
and they got it done the correct way.
Oh, well,
And this business of, oh, bring us your tired, bring us your poor, you know, the poem that's on the Statue of Liberty, the liberals always forget that part of the poem, whereas you will not become a public charge.
Right.
You can come here as long as you make your own way. We don't want you on the public dole. That's what the public
Exactly.
charge means, right? And so that's one of the things that you said, that,
Yes.
that they told you outright.
And I'm glad you brought up the Statue of Liberty.
You will not become a public charge.
Right.
But that's exactly what we're doing, is we're just letting them come in by the thousands on the southern border and start getting driver's licenses and
Yep.
scholarships and free medical care, etc.
And, you know, you raise the Statue of Liberty. I mean, right alongside Liberty Island is Ellis Island. And any American that hasn't been to Ellis Island wants to go there and take a look, because it's brutal. You know, what happened to people coming through, migrating to the United States back in the day. You know, it was a tough process. And, you know, having been through it in modern times, I saw a lot of similarities there. But we just want things to be fair. You know, as a legal migrant that came to this country the right way, and then there's my wife's rights and my kids' rights. They were all American citizens from day one. So my wife was born and raised in Newport, New Hampshire. My kids were Americans born abroad from the day they were born. What about their rights? You know, I mean, my wife was on the phone to, at the time, Senator Ayotte and Senator Hassan just saying, my husband's been stuck in Australia now for 2 months, and we've been waiting for 3 years. What about my rights? I'm an American. My kids are Americans. We want our dad.
I thought
my
if you,
husband
I
home.
thought if you married an American, you didn't need to go through all that.
Oh, this is just the spouse visa. It took that, that's the visa I came in on. It was the spouse visa. And, we always had a deal. At the time that we got together, I owned a business and I couldn't leave. And Jodie wanted to come and experience Australia, and she spent 14 years over there, and she did her time, and now it was my turn to come over here. And I've always wanted to live here anyway. Jodie never fell in love with Australia, but I did want to come here, and it's always been my ambition to live here.
That part is just horrendous, right? She lived with you in Australia for 14 years.
Yeah.
You were married for 14 years.
Correct.
Coming back to the United States as a married couple, she's a United States citizen, shouldn't have been an issue at all. All of those questions. Did you get married just to get citizenship? Right? Did you get married and stay married for 14 years and have 3 kids just to get citizenship?
Right.
That's very dedicated.
Right.
It is it is a very dedicated process if that's what you
Hey,
did.
I want to just say, in all fairness to Joe Biden, okay? Right?
Where are we going
Yes.
with this?
No, let's be fair. He is letting people come from Mexico into the United States without. But by the same token, he also opened up abortions in Mexico, so he's going to have them killed before they're born anyway. So it's not really, it's like it evens out, really.
They're using American tax money for
Tax
those
money to kill
abortions in Mexico, right?
to kill the little Mexican
Yep,
kids.
that's-
Isn't that special? He's special. He's done some nice executive orders. He's a very special guy.
52? We're up to 52.
We're up to
now.
52.
Oh yeah. One of them was one of the, oh no, it wasn't an executive order, but his one of the defense secretaries or whatnot has ordered a 60-day stand down with the military to sweep through the military and root out extremism, i.e. conservatism.
Or Trump supporters.
Right, exactly.
So basically anybody that supported Trump during the last election,
Which is
has
about
to be-
94% of the
something
United
like that,
States
yeah.
military.
they're going to have like five people left in the military by the time they're
And
done.
that'll be the excuse for not pushing back on China over Taiwan.
Well, we can't because
right?
we don't have
Even when our
anybody
friends in Australia ask us for the assistance, because
Right.
that's the only other partner we have down there.
Yep.
Correct.
Is there anything you've heard lately from Australia
not-
about what's going on in China and their
Well, the
their
Austra-
perspective?
The one thing I did forget to mention, and we're seeing this here as well, that this whole issue of COVID, it's causing a lot of division amongst the Australian community. It's really upsetting when I go into a news feed down there and they're turning Australians against people that were born in Australia like me that now live over here. They don't want us to come home, especially infected people like me that live in the United States, with all these hundreds of thousands of COVID deaths. They don't want me coming home.
Right.
But one thing Australia does know is that they've got this big monster right up north, right above them. And last time things got scary for Australia was back in 1941
Right.
when the Japanese started lobbing bombs into Darwin and then had a mini submarine going to Sydney Harbour. And guess who had to come along and bail them out? It wasn't going to be the mother country over there in England. They were trying to save their own island. So our Prime Minister at the time, John Curtin, he got on the phone to FDR and said, I need your help. Can you come down here? And, if it wasn't for Pearl Harbor, I don't know. We could have ended up speaking Japanese. Because they were on our doorstep and we were defenceless. And that's how Australians are feeling right now. They are very worried about that threat. And, they'll badmouth the United States and, especially Trump. God, you should see people in Australia say about the US now. It's all because of the media too, feeding them a bunch of BS.
Well, that's what it is. It's media.
Yeah, so, they have this... I've got friends and relatives back home that think that I live in this place where it's completely lawless, and there's people running around the streets with assault weapons, killing one another, because that's how the media in Australia portrayed the United States. Even though I live in New Hampshire, which is one of the safest places.
Second safest.
Yeah, and mind you, because of the very easy gun laws that we have
Right,
here,
right.
where ease of access to weapons actually prevents crime, and I've tried to explain that no one's going to come into my neighbourhood because they know that
It's
9 out
not
of 10 homes are
safe.
pack and eat.
Nobody's going to go in there. It's not safe up there.
Well, I'm saying that no would-be burglar is going to come in there. I beg your
that's-
pardon, is what I meant.
And that's a
Yeah.
proven fact. I always go back to the city of Kennesaw, Georgia, back in the late '80s, had a very high burglary rate. Right? They had a very big crime rate. People breaking into houses left and right.
Right.
So the city council, they passed an ordinance, and the ordinance was that the head of household for every residential resident within city limits must own a firearm and the ammunition that goes with it.
Love it.
For the next 5 or 6 years, there wasn't a single break-in the city of Kennesaw, Georgia.
Imagine that. Imagine
It's
that.
because the criminals knew
Yeah.
that they were outgunned.
Yeah.
So, they made a big deal of it. They had this little old lady, who lived by herself. They followed her into a gun shop,
Yeah.
and she picked a gun out. But the crime rate went straight down.
Right. And ironically, the last place I lived in Australia, the crime rate was substantially higher than any part of New Hampshire. It was bad. It was really bad. And I was broken into a year and a half before I left and came here. And I slept through the whole thing. But, had I woken up, I didn't have the right to defend myself. When they took our guns away, the government took out full-page ads, literally saying owning a weapon for self-defense is no longer your right.
Well, we'll see that soon. But here, it won't be followed by a mass turn-in. It's going to be followed by something a little more disgusting.
Yeah.
I think that example is like really crystal clear as to the ramifications of laws like that, because somebody like you had a business, so you have a business in Australia, you have a house, maybe you have a car, I don't know what else you had, so you got all this things that you've worked for. If you get arrested with a firearm, you're going to lose everything.
Right.
Right? Because you're going to be in jail. Your business is going to go under. You probably lose your house, your car, everything else. Okay? So for a law-abiding citizen, when they pass a law, it has a direct and real impact.
Right.
Because that law-abiding citizen could lose his wife, his family, his business, everything. So he's worked 20, 30, 40 years for his security. He could lose everything because he fails to follow this law. Whereas the kid that is the criminal, maybe they're on drugs, whatever it is, they get caught, they're just going to get probation anyway.
Right.
Right? So the only person that is truly affected by gun laws is the law-abiding citizen who you didn't have to worry about to begin with. I had a friend in New York. I was talking to him about it once a long time ago. He said, well, it's like this. Some guy comes into New York City, with his wife and kids, and he has a gun on him. Somebody finds out, he gets arrested. He just lost his wife, his house, his job, everything.
Right.
Now you take a kid who's got an ounce of coke, right, and a gun to protect it. He gets arrested. There's a year mandatory now, right? So the guy from the suburbs who went in to watch, West Side Story at the theater, he loses everything. Now you take a kid who's selling drugs and he's got a handgun with him to protect his ounce of cocaine. Well, he gets arrested. Yes, he's looking at a year mandatory for the handgun, but he's looking at 20 years for the coke. They plead down to 2,
Right.
and he's out in 3/4 of a year or so. So the year mandatory meant 0 to the coke dealer and everything to the guy who. So he could have he and his wife killed by some gang member or drug addict or whatever, because he couldn't defend himself. But The person selling drugs made no difference to him.
Right.
The only people that obey gun laws are the people that were not a threat to society to begin with.
Right. I mean, you guys are probably sitting here thinking, well, I guess there's no gun crime in Australia, right?
No, there can't be. There's no guns.
It's impossible.
It's impossible.
Well, actually, no, it is. It is possible. And, we have a very big problem, especially in southwestern Sydney, with organised drug gangs.
Yeah.
And mainly, by the way, people that migrated to Australia.
Yeah.
I'm calling a spade a spade. These are gangs based on racial elements.
Yeah.
But, these guys are armed and they're mainly killing each other, which is, I guess, the best case scenario. But there's been a few stray bullets going to the wrong places, and they're the
where do
people
they-
that
I have a solution. Take out a full-page ad in those cities where those gangs are, and they'll just
Right.
turn all their guns in.
Yeah.
Just let them know it's illegal for them to own those guns.
And that was the scariest part, was
that'll-
when this law did come in, we were so compliant. We just followed the rules. And right now, with the whole COVID thing, it's the same deal. They're just all following the rules like sheep. And that's another thing I'm sadly seeing here. We're just following the rules. We're putting up with this. We're coming up to March 16. I remember it clearly. It was the day that our governor, God love him, shut down the whole state, bars and restaurants, because St. Patrick's Day was looming the following day. At the time, I was...
2 weeks to flatten the curve, Mr. Sununu.
At the time, I'd lost my job, I'd lost my income, so I was just trying to make ends meet. There was no way I was applying for unemployment, so I was driving for Uber. And it was going great. I was busy as. And then I'll never forget that day. I was right here on Elm Street, and I picked up a guy and I took him to the 101 Grill here to pick up his pink slip. And I said, "How's your day going?" And he said, "Terrible, I just lost my job." And I said, "What happened?" And he said, "You haven't heard? The governor just shut down all the bars and restaurants." Well, the following day I came back here and I sat around for an hour and there were no rides. There was nothing happening. And we're nearly a year down the track. And the bars and restaurants are open, kind of, sort of, with all these occupancy rules and not the 100% occupancy, but we've still got the 6-foot rule, right? And you've got to have the screens up in the restaurants and all that nonsense. I just can't believe we're nearly a year on from that and we've still got all these restrictions on our liberties, and it's frightening. And we are largely just complying and putting up with it. We shouldn't be putting up
What we need
with
to
it.
do is keep beating Gary over the head about it and say, Gary, get the rest of the Republican-controlled Senate and House to get rid of those emergency orders.
Well, that's
Why
going to be.
haven't you reviewed them?
It's going to be tough on Gary because it seems to me that, and I'm unfortunately anecdotally I'm seeing it everywhere. Most Granite Staters seem pretty happy with Governor Sununu. He got 2/3 of he didn't get my vote, but he got 2/3 of the vote. And there's a lot of independents and Democrats
Depends
that
on
voted
who's
there.
counting.
Well, I know. In defense of Gary, because I'm the victim tonight.
Yeah.
I did have what the heck did I do? Oh yeah, I had basically a motion at our first meeting to try to ask the governor to rescind Executive Order 76. That was the one that was completely unconstitutional because it required people to
Vaccine registration?
the vaccine registration.
Right.
Yep.
So under New Hampshire statute and under the Constitution, you have a right to privacy. Under statute, you have a right to stay out of any vaccine registry. He suspended the law and then ignored the Constitution for Executive Order 76. And so I had this was, to me, I knew I didn't have the votes to repeal the whole thing, but I thought I might have enough votes just to get that done.
Right.
And we didn't even get 50%. We needed a 2/3 vote to suspend the rules, and then a simple majority to actually pass it. We didn't even have a simple majority to suspend the rules. So you have, it's politics. You have all the Democrats voting against me, right? Because they love lockdowns and oppression.
Right.
And then you had a bunch of Republicans that, well, I don't want to go on record as voting against Chris Sununu.
Right.
It's like you'd rather go on record voting against the Constitution than Chris Sununu.
Right.
That's basically what it was. And so there's just not the testicular fortitude to do anything. I tried to do anything. Leah, our other
Right.
state rep,
Yep.
Leah was on board, and quite a few other people. But it's just you need the numbers. You can't. One state rep does not make a legislator make.
Right, but I think at the end of the day, the people get the politicians they deserve. And like I said, we're just seeing complete complicity here. Everyone's just sitting back and copying this while people are losing their livelihood. How many businesses have gone broke over the last 11
Oh yeah.
months?
Well, no, that's you got to remember the big businesses with big connections did pretty well.
Right, there's no contact tracing at our Home Depot.
No, there's no contact tracing at Walmart, and Amazon's doing great.
Right,
So you guys got to think of the big picture and the big money. They're doing fine, so you don't have to worry about them.
yeah.
So if you like losing sleep because people losing their jobs, those guys are all set. So just
Well, did you hear what John Kerry said to the pipeline workers
Yeah.
this week?
oh no,
John Kerry, our climate czar.
the climate czar and his private jet.
Yeah.
Flying
Yeah.
squirrel.
He told the pipeline workers, well, you should have made better career choices. That's what he told them.
You should have married a billionaire.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Married a billionaire and throw all your Vietnam War medals over a fence.
Yeah. He's a traitor to this country, man. What a horrible person.
He's a piece of work.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know what to tell you, Adam. I mean I wish I had the votes to get that done. It's
All I can say is we've been, like you said, people are just rolling over, being compliant. Oh, I don't want to vote against the governor. I don't want to do this. That's got to change.
Yeah.
We got a censure vote against Liz Cheney in her home state.
Right.
We got that going on.
Yep.
the recall vote in
And
California.
we got the recall vote in California. That's just it's almost
Pretty
there.
close, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They got 1.5 million signatures.
Yeah.
So hopefully the standing down and rolling over is not going to extend itself
I-
to the midterm elections.
I think you have to look at the big picture too. Is some of the positive things are you have California and Florida, which have similar environments and similar quantities of people, and COVID was handled very, very loosely in Florida and tyrannical in California.
Yep.
And more people, I believe, died in California
many
than
more.
Florida.
Many more.
more. So you're being fed a load of BS.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And we're all out of time. I didn't know we're out of time. That
We
easy.
are out of time. We covered a lot of stuff.
We did? Did we get anything good?
A lot of our viewers maybe think that we're broken records, but if we're not the broken record on these issues of oppression that's coming to America, then somebody has to be.
Right.
So
Keep your powder dry. We'll see you guys next week.
thanks, Adam.